You know, we use money every single day. But have you ever really stopped to think about what it actually is? Where did it come from? Well, its origin story is one of the biggest debates in economics. Today, we're going to dive into a book that completely flips the script on the standard story, Murray Rothbard's What Has Government Done to Our Money? It's a short, sharp, and super powerful look at the history of money. All right, so let's just jump right in with a central question Rothbard throws at us. Most of us, we think of money as, dollars, euros, yen, stuff that governments create. But Rothbard's argument is that this is a total historical takeover, not how things were meant to be. He really makes you ask, what if the best money isn't a government product at all, but something the state can't touch? So to really get what he's critiquing, we have to go way back. I mean, all the way back to the beginning. Let's just forget about central banks and printing presses for a minute. Rothbard kicks off his story in a simple, free society that's just trying to solve a very basic, very real problem. So picture this. You're a wheat farmer and you need a new pair of shoes. In a world of pure barter, you've got to find a shoemaker who not only has shoes in your size, but also just happens to need wheat right now. I mean, what are the odds? It's a huge pain. And Rothbard's point is that society didn't wait around for a government to fix this. The market itself, just through millions of individual trades, figured it out. People started using a common, easily traded good as a go-between, and eventually things like gold and silver won out. And this is what Rothbard calls commodity money. Gold wasn't money because some king declared it so. It became money because people chose it. And why? Well, it just had all the right properties. It's durable, it doesn't rust, you can divide it into tiny pieces, it's easy to carry around. And crucially, it was already valued for things like jewelry. Its value was real and stable. For Rothbard, this was the market's beautiful, organic solution. Now, this next point is absolutely key to his whole argument. Think about it like this. If we could magically double the number of cars in the world, society would be much richer, right? More cars for everyone. But what happens if you magically double the supply of money? Are we any richer? Rothbard says, no way. All you've done is create more dollars to chase the exact same amount of stuff. Eventually, prices just double. The whole thing is a wash, except for the people who get the new money first. And this is where the story, in Rothbard's view, takes a pretty dark turn. He charts this slow, deliberate process where governments went from being a simple guardian of money to the very entity that corrupts it for its own gain. So how did this takeover happen? Rothbard says it was a slow creep, not an overnight hostile takeover. It started innocently enough. The government said, hey, let us handle minting coins just to make sure the quality is good. Sounds helpful, right? But once they had that monopoly, they could start to cheat. They began debasing the coins, shaving off little gold here, mixing in cheaper metals there. Then came the bigger moves, creating central banks to completely monopolize currency, and then giving the banking system the power to create money out of thin air through fractional reserves. And all of this brings us to what Rothbard sees as the government's ultimate power, the inflation engine. But his definition of inflation is super specific, and you really have to get it to understand his argument. See, for most of us, when we hear inflation, we think of prices going up at the store. But for Rothbard, that's just the symptom. It's like a fever. The rising prices are the fever, but the actual disease, the inflation itself, is the central bank expanding the money supply. Devaluing every dollar you have is what causes the prices to rise. This quote just nails the why of it all, according to Rothbard. Look, nobody likes regular taxes, right? You see it on your paycheck and it stings. But inflation? He calls it a stealth tax. It's so much sneakier. The government gets to print and spend new money, and most people don't even realize they're the ones footing the bill through the slow-motion theft of their savings value. And according to Rothbard, this whole process is fundamentally unfair. The new money doesn't just show up in everyone's bank account at the same time. No, it gets injected right at the top, to the government, to the big banks, to politically connected companies. And they get to spend it while prices are still low. But as that money works its way through the economy, it bids up prices for everything. By the time it trickles down to regular people, their savings and their paychecks just don't go as far. It's a massive hidden wealth transfer from the bottom to the top. Rothbard then gives us this historical play-by-play of how this whole system got locked in during the 20th century, as governments, one by one, cut every last tie our money had to anything real, like gold. And this timeline is basically the crime scene. It really kicks off with World War I. Governments needed a ton of cash to fund the war, so they just hit pause on the gold standard so they could print. Then you get this absolutely wild move in 1933 when FDR makes it illegal for American citizens to even own gold. After World War II, you get this weird, fragile system called Bretton Woods, where only foreign governments could swap dollars for gold. And then, in 1971, came the final cut. President Nixon went on TV and officially closed the gold window. And just like that, the entire world's monetary system was floating on nothing but government promises. And this quote just perfectly sums up Rothbard's whole take. You'll hear people say the gold standard failed, that it was too restrictive. Rothbard's response is, no, gold didn't fail. Governments failed. They broke their promises because those promises acted like a leash, stopping them from spending and inflating as much as they wanted. Okay, so if the system is that broken, what's the solution? What does Rothbard think we should do? Well, he argues for nothing less than a complete U-turn, a return to what he calls sound free market money. So when you boil it all down, Rothbard is presenting us with a clear choice between two worlds. In one world, you have sound money. It's based on a real commodity, like gold. It holds its value, and it puts a natural limit on government power because, well, you can't just print more gold. In the other world, our world, you have fiat money. Its value comes purely from government decree. And Rothbard argues this path always, inevitably, leads to constant devaluation and gives the state a blank check. So at the end of the day, after all the history and all the economics, Rothbard's message is actually pretty simple. For him, money isn't a political tool or a toy for central planners. It's the lifeblood of the economy. And he believed that just like we want a free market for cars or computers, we ought to have a free market for money itself. And that brings us to a really fascinating question for our time. Rothbard wrote this decades ago, way before anyone was talking about Bitcoin or DeFi. But his core argument, this idea of a money that's free from government control, has never been more relevant. In this new digital age, you just have to wonder, are we seeing the first real-world experiments of the very free market money system he envisioned all those years ago?